各位觀眾大家好，歡迎收睇26分鐘見證實錄。受酒精或者藥物等影響駕駛係 BC 省以至全國造成致命車禍嘅3大主因之一。根據 BC 保險公司嘅統計全省每年平均發生超過2200宗同受影響駕駛有關嘅車禍。呢啲事故唔單止奪走咗寶貴嘅生命，亦都徹底改變咗受害者同埋佢哋家人嘅生活，將佢哋推向深淵，面臨冇辦法挽回嘅傷痛同困境。
He just plowed right into the back of my car, and the back of the car, the taillights, the bumper, and all that stuff just burst off the car. It was like an explosion, big noise.
So if you're involved in a crash where there's impaired driving, you're likely in breach of your insurance. And that's something that you'll have to pay for all the damages out of your own pocket.
We don't have suspicion that you have alcohol in your system. We just pull you over, you're driving, I can read you the demand, and you have to provide a sample.
So hands on your side, take a deep breath. Okay, and go. Blow, 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 blow.
The fact is impaired driving is 100% preventable.
This is the car I was driving, and that's the back end of the car was just taken right off by the impaired driver.
Bob Robertson 係酒後駕駛事故嘅受害者，30年之前嘅一場車禍徹底改變咗佢嘅人生軌跡。
It was in June 16th, 1994 at 11:30 p.m. and I was crossing through the intersection at number 4 in Alderbridge. I was heading west. I was heading into Richmond. And I was in a small car. I was in a Honda Civic, and as I passed through the intersection, to my right, I saw a car coming at me at high speed. I had no way to avoid him, and he crashed right into me. He just plowed right into the back of my car, and the back of the car, the taillights, the bumper, and all that stuff just burst off the car. It was like an explosion. Big noise, and then my car did a loop and it hit the traffic light in the middle of the intersection, and then it's being a Honda, it had a front wheel drive, and it pushed me forward along the road out of sight. And as that car hit me and I went out of the way, he went further through the intersection. Another car broadsided him where his wife was sitting. Now this man was impaired by drugs and alcohol, and his wife had told him not to drive, but she jumped in the car after him when he took off, and he just simply took off heading south, and he went right through the red light and plowed into me, and the other car plowed into him. Nobody was killed. There was lots of injuries. The impaired driver, of course, had no injuries at all. And then someone said, my car was down the way and there was no taillights on anymore, and they said, oh, there's another car down there, because my car was black, and at that time there was no lights in that area. There was no townhouses, there was no shopping mall like there is now. It was completely black, and they could just barely see my car, and someone said, there's another car down here, and they came and they extracted me from that car, my car, and put me on a board, on the ground, and then took me to the hospital. I believe there was times that I was not awake. I believe I was passed out, but when you're passed out, you don't know the element of time. And I know when they finally got me into the hospital, which seemed to take forever, and then they tried to, like my body was all bent up, then they took x-rays. They had to straighten me out. It was very painful, very painful. But they determined that nothing was broken but the shoulders, the thoracic area of my shoulders. The scapula was severely damaged because I was whipped around in the car. And you don't just get over that immediately. Even in a minor accident, the pain is incredible, and then the recovery time is long. So this was a major crash, and it took a long time to get over the injuries from that. And this is pictures of the work I would do.
Is this you or
No, that's somebody else. That's
like your employees?
One of my employees, yes. The business I was in was aircraft maintenance, and that requires a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of hard work and a lot of overhead work, climbing ladders, going hop high, working on things, working on heavy things. I didn't have the strength of my arms, and I lost the ability to use my arms with any force for quite a while. And I couldn't do that. After the crash, I couldn't work. I had my business. It failed. It started to fail. I couldn't make the payments on my house. So ultimately I had to sell the house and go and rent somewhere. And my daughter had just moved out, but my son was still there. And I had 2 teenage kids to look after. And without a house, without a job, and the company went bankrupt. I had to be responsible for all of that. That affected my life tremendously. Everything that I had planned and was going fine changed instantly from that crash. Your whole life changes, and you don't get over it immediately. It takes a long time to recover from that. And it takes a long time to get your finances back in order. When you go bankrupt, you have to start over again. I was 50 years old at that time, or 44 years old, and then ultimately, by the time I went bankrupt, I was 50. So you can't hold it together for that long. And I don't have family that will support me. I don't have mom and dad and other family that have money that can help me survive. I was alone. My mother and father had passed away. There was no money there. So I didn't have the resources to keep everything together myself. So ultimately I went bankrupt and had to start over again at the age of 50, which was very difficult.
1994年夏天嘅呢一場事故，將 Bob Robertson 推向人生谷底。到咗2000年，佢試圖通過司法途徑追翻自己喺呢一場車禍之中嘅部分損失。
I went to court and I lost that trial as well because they refused to mention the impaired driving portion and many other reasons. Court is not a fun place to be. If you're ever going to do something, go to court and listen to arguments in a trial, and there is no win in court. Some people do, I did not. And ultimately it cost me the trial. I had to pay for the trial. I had to pay for the jury. It was a 10-day jury trial. And I had to pay for all the costs of the lawyers. And I was completely set back because of that. And I just didn't understand why things would go that way. And I started looking for resources. And Mothers Against Drunk Driver was in the phone book. And I called them. And they said, well, we can help you. And I don't know how they can help you at that time. And I went and met other people, and they've been through serious trauma also.
此後喺 Matt 母親反醉駕組織同身邊嘅親朋好友幫助之下 ，Robertson 開始重拾對生活嘅信心。
When I went to the people at MAD, they'd all been through their own traumatic stories. They'd all been through the court system, which is much worse, and it's even just as bad now. And nobody understands the court system. Nobody understands the legal system. And I feel that's the fault of our training in high school, is nobody teaches you what it's like to go to court and how to deal with people in the legal profession and how they speak and how they talk and how to protect yourself from that sort of thing. So they all had that experience. They could explain it to me, and I met many other people that had been through much more difficult trauma, loss of life, loss of daughter, loss of son, loss of family, and how they survived. And they have resources from professionals. They have professional people involved within the organization that you can speak to. They have courses that they offer at their conventions, And they will tell you what goes on within you, within your mind, after you've been involved in a drunk driving crash. And they also will give you assistance. They'll also give you advice on how to proceed. And also, if you're dealing in a legal matter, they know other people that have been involved in that sort of thing, and they can help you wind your way through the tracks of getting a good legal resolution.
而通過同母親反醉駕組織 MAD 嘅接觸 ，Warrison 重新開始思考醉酒駕駛等危險行為嘅本質同影響。
I felt angry, of course, because somebody that drives impaired is taking everyone else's life in their own hands. I felt angry that this person did that. Not only that, an impaired driving charge, driving impaired is against the law in Canada. So why would somebody drive against the law? And then after becoming involved with other groups, mainly MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and finding out the results of what happens to people that are impaired driving crashes, then it made me angry that somebody would attempt to do something criminally wrong and destroy other people's lives. Not only are they destroying their lives, they're destroying other people's lives. Why would somebody else do that? Only somebody that doesn't have any responsibility, they have no fear of hurting other people, would drive impaired. And that's what made me get involved so much in MAD, because I met other people that have, their families have been taken away by impaired drivers. And often the impaired driver survives because they have this innate urge to save themselves, but they'll destroy other lives for that.
現時 Rob Warrison 作為加拿大母親反醉駕組織 MAD 嘅發言人，佢希望能夠提高公眾對於酒後駕駛等受影響駕駛行為危害嘅認識，並且致力於推動司法改革，促進更加完善嘅立法體系。佢強調，消除酒後駕駛仍然任重道遠，唔需要社會嘅共同努力。
So perception of impaired driving has changed considerably because of MAD. The social acceptability of drinking and driving has changed completely. A very high percentage of people will not drink and drive, and they will criticize other people that will think of drinking and driving. But there is still a small group of people that think, well, I can get away with it. I've done it 1,000 times and I'll do it again. Or it's only a 10-minute drive and I can make it home. A very small group of those people still exist in our society, and those are the people that we're trying to reach to change their perception of impaired driving and get them off the road.
受影響駕駛嘅危害不容忽視。警方為咗預防同埋打擊呢一類行為，採取咗邊一啲具體嘅措施呢？另外，受影響駕駛行為係咪會影響到汽車保費？飛思保險公司又係點樣通過宣傳同埋教育去提高公眾對於相關危害嘅認識呢？我哋下一節翻嚟再睇。歡迎翻嚟節目時間。卑詩省擁有全國最嚴格嘅受影響駕駛法律。近年嚟省內嘅警方亦都加強打擊酒後同藥後駕駛等受影響駕駛行為。司機喺行車嘅時候遇到警方截查，應該注意邊一啲嘅事項呢？如果被查出受影響駕駛行為，將會面臨啲乜嘢嘅法律後果同懲罰呢？我哋繼續去睇睇。
Richmond Tango 12 1011 screen. How are you? It's Constable Lim with the Richmond RCMP Road. Okay. So I have reasonable grounds to suspect that you have, within the preceding 3 hours, operated conveyance, namely a motor vehicle, with alcohol in your body. In accordance with the provisions of the Criminal Code, I hereby demand that you provide a sample of your breath immediately, suitable for analysis using an approved screening device, and to accompany me for the purposes of enabling such sample to be taken. Do you understand?
Yes.
So you ready? So hands on your side, take a deep breath. Okay, and go. Blow, 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 blow.
列治文皇家騎警道路安全執法小組負責人 Peter Somerville 表示，酒後駕駛係受影響駕駛行為嘅主要表現之一。近年嚟，卑詩省喺立法方面進一步完善咗相關嘅規定，為警方嘅執法工作提供咗更加大嘅便利。
We also have a mandatory demand now that has been brought in, which means that any person driving a vehicle on a public roadway or on a highway, as it's called in the Motor Vehicle Act, can be pulled over, and we can read a mandatory demand just simply because you're driving a vehicle, which is basically the same, but we don't have suspicion that you have alcohol in your system. We just pull you over, you're driving, I can read you the demand, and you have to provide a sample. So that is something that we can use as well in certain situations if somebody's driving behavior is a little bit poor in front of us, they're weaving a little bit, something to that effect, or we have a driving complaint. We pull the person over, we can't detect any alcohol, so we may not have the suspicion, but we can still read a mandatory demand. They still have to provide the sample. The results from the sample, whether it's a refusal to provide or they provide a sample and there's alcohol in their system, would be the same penalties as whether or not we had suspicion.
此外，警方亦都會不定期設置路障，對受影響駕駛行為進行巡查。而根據卑詩省警察局長聯會同卑詩保險公司制定嘅執法時間表，警方每年12月都會重點打擊酒後、藥後駕駛等受影響駕駛嘅違法行為。近年嚟，卑詩省各地警方亦都引入咗新嘅調查工具嚟到處理涉及藥物嘅違規駕駛調查，加強咗對於吸毒之後駕駛行為嘅偵察同埋打擊。而酒後駕駛行為嘅認定，主要就係依據司機血液之中嘅酒精濃度。
Instruments that we use, they have 3 levels that they will register. The first level is a pass, which is a digital reading. It'll give me a reading of 000 up to 059, which means that your blood alcohol concentration, you have alcohol in your system, but maybe not enough that we're going to do anything about it. Somebody in the 50 to 59 range could still receive a 24-hour suspension on their driving license because anything over 50 milligram percent is considered too much, and you would wind up losing your license because of it for only a 24-hour period though. The next level would be 60 to 99, which is the warn range. The instrument would show green for the pass, it will show yellow if you're in the warn range, and will say the word warn. That would result in either a 3-day driving prohibition and an impound of your vehicle, possibly a 7-day if you've had one previous, or even longer, depending. So if this is your second or third, the penalties will increase. And the third level that it registers at is a fail level, which is 100 milligram percent and above. The criminal code is only 80 milligram percent, so we're giving you an extra buffer just to be on the safe side for the individuals, so that it's not hitting right at 80. But it's definitely above the legal limit. That would register as a fail, which is the screen lights up red. It will say the word fail, and that's where, at that point, we have to determine whether we are going to proceed criminally through the Criminal Code of Canada, or if we're going to proceed administratively, in a sense, which is provincial charges, which is the immediate roadside prohibition. And then depending on which way the officer proceeds in that situation will depend on the penalties that you're going to wind up receiving or having to face after that.
佢仲提到，警方喺處理酒後駕駛行為嘅時候，會根據駕駛執照等級嘅唔同，對駕駛者採取相應嘅處理措施。
The only place that really makes a difference is in the graduated licensing. For the Class 7 driver, it's 0 BAC. Blood alcohol concentration. So if you're a Class 7 or a learner, you can't have any alcohol in your system. So if I were to pull you over, you provide to me a Class 7 novice driver's license, I read you a mandatory demand, and you blow 10, you're going to lose your license for 12 hours because you have alcohol in your system and you're not allowed. But if you're a full Class 5 driver and you blow a 10, thank you for stopping, I appreciate your cooperation, be free to go. So the lower numbers can affect certain drivers out there, but they're not going to affect the vast majority of drivers who have their full driver's licenses.
而卑斯保險公司道路安全及社區協調員 Harvey Cooner 則指出，酒後駕駛行為亦都會對汽車保險產生影響。
There's a driver risk premium. So on top of paying your regular insurance, there's a driver risk premium that impaired drivers will need to pay, and that compounds from year to year. So that's something that in addition to your car insurance, you'll need to pay as well. So if you're involved in a crash where there's impaired driving, you're likely in breach of your insurance. And that's something that you'll have to pay for all the damages out of your own pocket. So that's something that you have to be aware of. If you're going to choose to drink and drive, there are a lot of different liabilities that come into play as far as the damage and everything that could be out of your own pocket as well.
佢表示，卑斯保險公司通過學校、警方以及社區等合作，喺全省範圍內推出名為 Impaired Goggles 受影響眼鏡嘅外展活動，利用視覺對公眾進行防範受影響駕駛行為嘅教育。
So when you put on the goggles, they impair your vision, make you feel dizzy, nauseous, and just doesn't feel right. So it impairs the vision, making you feel like you have drugs or alcohol in your system. Then we ask the participant to do simple tasks. So it may be walking a line. So heel toe, walking a line normally without the goggles, then walking with the goggles on. The main point that we're trying to get across to youth, to the population out there at community events is that you cannot walk impaired. How are you expected to drive a vehicle impaired? So you see that significant impact in your walking when you're trying to walk a straight line and those impairment makes you go a different direction. Now try that with the goggles and you see how it affects your abilities and how would that feel if you had those goggles on or you're impaired while you're driving. What could that devastation could occur on the roads and how it could affect other people.
佢指出，即使卑斯省擁有全國最嚴格嘅酒後駕駛法規，但係統計數字顯示，省內醉駕情況依然令人擔憂。
Provincially, what we see is we have over 2,300 crashes per year that are due to impaired related driving. Out of that, there's 1,300 people that are injured in those crashes. And on average, we see 63 people pass away in car crash fatalities due to impaired driving. So if we look at over the years, before counterattack came into play, we were losing over 300 people a year on average. BC was a leading province in the amount of impaired fatal car crashes we had per year. We've come a long way since then, from going from 300 per year now down to 63. But there's still a lot more work to have in our communities, and that's where we rely on our police with the enforcement and ICBC with the education. So every year there's 2 campaigns throughout the year, one in the summer, one in the winter. So summertime, it's a time for road trips, summer barbecues and get-togethers. People want to have a few drinks and enjoy themselves, and that's when counterattack roadblocks is really important, along with education as well. And then now in the wintertime, we just had Christmas and New Year's. So that's another time that roadblocks and counterattack are out there in the province, making sure people are getting home safe.
The fact is impaired driving is 100% preventable. What we need is for the public to recognize if you want to, go out and have an evening where you're going to consume alcohol, if you are going to be using drugs, plan alternative ways to get yourself home. You could have a designated driver, you could use a ride-hail sharing service, a public transportation. The fact is, we want to prevent people from being injured and facing the horrible potential effects of being involved in a collision. And anything the public can do makes that difference. Make that decision to not get behind the wheel when you have been using alcohol. We're imploring the public, please, if you are going to go out and have an evening where you are going to be consuming alcohol or you may be consuming drugs, don't get behind that wheel. Get home safely.
It is a very responsible job of being a driver on the road with other people. You're taking your life and everyone else's life in your hands. So if you're impaired for whatever reason, don't drive.
好啦，今集嘅節目時間就差唔多啦。咁如果觀眾對我哋嘅節目有啲乜嘢意見嘅話，係好歡迎大家以電郵嘅方式同我哋聯絡㗎。我哋嘅電郵地址係 mag26@fairchildtv.com。如果觀眾想上網重溫今集嘅節目，亦都可以上到去我哋嘅網站3w.fairchildtv.com， 點擊節目重溫一欄就可以睇得返㗎啦。 下星期同樣時間再同大家見面，晚安。